First speaker is David Scotland, someone I've known for a long time, and David's going to talk from a practical perspective, what it's actually like to work at a very high level in the wine and also the spirits business. He's worked for John Harvey and Sons, IDV, briefly, and I love the briefly bit about Percy Fox and Son. Before he went to Allied Domecq, where he was best known, he stayed there for 10 years and he ended up being a board director of Allied Domecq. He's now a non-executive director at Inchcape and also at Wine Intelligence.
Tim, having you there makes me feel this is a dissertation and I'm being judged. I think it's quite a year and a half.
We'll be scoring you out of 10 at the end.
Keep out of this, you heard him say. I didn't realise also that Tim was going to do a presentation on Mavericks, so I could probably do this in 5 minutes. Firstly, please keep your phones on. I'd be grateful for your embarrassment and the time it gives me to think about some of the scrawlings that I've got on here. Let me start with a kind of test for you. When people pretty much of any age say why, what for, who says so, I don't agree, or really annoying things like, yes, but is it sustainable? As a test, I'm suggesting to you, as a posit, it's annoying, particularly if it goes on quite a bit. But within there are some really important areas that I want to talk about a little bit. Not just the question type, but the irritation it causes in us. Maverick thinking, and how does disruptive behaviour change things? Well, the first thing is it's disruptive, and that's bound to happen. When I watch documentaries and occasionally read books about the great and the good, you frequently come across things like no one had ever done it like that before. This was the first time. It had never been imagined. And what then happens usually is a great deal of blockage, sometimes execution, imprisonment. I'm thinking immediately of people like Galileo, Darwin. They cause chaos. To a certain extent, Darwin probably still is doing. And I think of how much we love, certainly in Britain, the story about Nelson not being able to see a signal because he put the telescope to his blind eye. Imagine if the bosses thought about that type of behaviour. And the more I thought about this, the more I thought that maybe only disruptive behaviour actually changes things. And there's a famous Irish iconoclast, Bernard Shaw, said the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. That's reasonable behaviour and we'll feel comfortable with it. I sure didn't say that, I added that on, sorry. I should stick to the correct one. The unreasonable one persists, that's important, in trying to adapt the world to himself. Shaw therefore posits at the end of this quote, therefore all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So going back to the definition which Tim attempted, wasn't a bad attempt actually, on Maverick. I was hoping nobody would mention Mr. Maverick. The key point was it was about cattle, usually abandoned by a mother, a cow in most cases, who then go off on their own and are outside the herd and could be therefore branded by anybody. It's come to mean, as Tim said, dissenter, unorthodox, doesn't follow the thinking of the group. And in a book entitled Why the Most Original Minds Win, the authors say, if you listen carefully, the entrepreneurs don't sound like traditional executives. Well, what do they sound like? Can I this morning help at all in this? I think often they sound passionate, they sound full of ideas, they are frequently provocative, they can be quite random. I've often apologised and needed to for rambling, and people who know me well, and are probably kind, say, but some of your best ideas come when you're rambling. Paul, you said it this morning, bless you, come again. I've also noticed in assessments over the years, I've been a corporate animal for a long time and actually got to the top, and if you've been a corporate animal for 40 years as I have, you've probably been neutered of all independent thinking, so I possibly in a way shouldn't be here. But I noted that people are called immature when we're talking about succession planning, for example, and I've come to believe that immature means he hasn't yet achieved the correct level of obedience and subservience, or simply doesn't yet agree with me. Now, there are some who are immature. I own up to it. I love being quite immature quite often. And Mavericks often are defined by those in the herd. That's, I would have thought, fairly obvious. It's a way to be partly dismissive, but there is value in it. And a lot of Mavericks are survivors. They're resilient. They don't seem to care what would happen when they say often, why, I don't agree. And the easiest thing is to move on without them. The corporate world does this a great deal. Entrepreneurs tend to love people who say, let's have a look at this again, or why not, who says so, etc. Now it's at this point that I'm mindful of a great quote from Trains, Planes and Automobiles by Steve Martin, who says, here's a little tip for you: when talking to people, try to have a point. It makes it so much more interesting. So I'm going to go straight to the point. So if I do get taken off in a second, after I've gone over my time, I'm hoping you will at least remember this. I have to turn my back on you briefly. Okay, this is a test. So what I'm going to talk about here is going beyond your authority. And the reason for picking this one is because, as a type, Mavericks tend to occupy territory they're not meant to. But who says they're not meant to? And can it be done in a way that even corporates can accept? Can you pick more people who tend to do this? Are you noticing at the moment in society, as solutions to really big issues are really, really needed, bringing communities together, that some people are, and they often get TV programs, are moving huge communities and even the nation by completely going beyond their brief? Here's the point. There's a person, so all of us one way or another then have a role. So a person in a role. Pretty much within.
Can you all hear over on that side? No? Yeah. You have to shout it.
Probably can't see it either, but I'm talking about... No, it's okay. I'm talking about a person, the upright mark, in a role, let's say marketing manager or marketing director, within a system, let's say Diageo, for the sake of argument. I can't call that handwrite, I'd be sensible. That's all natural. I've done it in quite odd shapes because whenever I've done this in the past it looked a bit like a breast, and that's not my intention. I've got the pictures then.
Very strange.
That's my point. So far everyone's okay with this. Is really easy. It's the next bit. There's a huge gap between the system, the organisation, let's call it, and government, which is where you tend to have to stop because they legislate, and you can get into serious trouble there. But society, because let's call it that for want of something else, offers massive possibilities. And to make the point stark, and I'm not picking especially on marketing people, but I think they're a fair cop in terms of this point. You frequently see them simply sitting at a desk looking at a brand, looking at a bottle, and inevitably they're going to change the bloody pack. What really has to happen is go out there and find out what people are doing. And this is the type of maverick that you need to look at, the type of person who is bumping up against other departments, the sort of person who loves cross-functional, is in, say, even IT, and is looking at why there is a dysfunction between a board of directors who are talking about things like PE, earnings per share, economic value added, total shareholder return, with massive focus on the shareholder, which has no relation to what the boys and girls in the organisation actually do. The type of person who is out there wondering whether or not some connection could be made with the Olympic Games for their brand, because it's out there, and because it's happening, and because it's emotional, which counts. That's the main point. Let me get back to why not, who says so, I don't agree. And in my case, apparently one of the most annoying things that I do at boards, which is, I've been thinking about this, and my colleagues tell me I then throw a hand grenade. It is not deliberate. It's simply that my best thinking happens really quickly. And boards simply have to cope with it. Either say, that's silly, David, and close me down, or can we talk about it later on? But I think the type is not conducive to promotion, is my main point. So today, big issues, difficult times, intense competition. And it is, I think, a self-evident fact that not one of us is as smart as all of us together. So one way or another, Mavericks need to be brought into what will work for everybody. And I come to another point, which I was going to write up on the screen, but because it's important. Ideas which resonate. Ideas that move people are not simply logical. Ideas that feel right for people. If the Maverick behavior tends to be connected to and with something like that, something that looks like it's leadership in service to group, rather than just ego and CV and bonus, then there could be something really important. So in the brief moments left, this splits into two areas. What does going beyond authority mean and how does it work? I'll do a couple of stories later on that. Which types of people do it? Do you have any? Are you one? We promote bright people with IQ who are aggressive. In fact, from school, the people who do sums are considered very clever, and those that don't and are thinking about things are often branded lazy or dreamers. Some of us probably were. But the reality is, we are really lazy about typing people simply because they have high IQ, when the world of moving people is almost entirely about emotional things. All discretionary effort is motivated emotionally. This other thing is about ideas, concepts, designs, new thinking. We are set, hardwired, I understand, I'm told, to be neophobic from childhood, to worry about things that are new. But they have to happen, and they can be extremely exciting. I've been on 6 PLC boards by invitation. I would never have got through an interview process. And the only reason for mentioning it is simply because my type doesn't get there. I was frequently asked, how did you get onto a PLC board? There's an assumption at the board that you're structured, analytical, numerous, detailed, and reliable. And I'm not. The thing that happened was there is a challenge type. There's a big picture type. There's an EQ type that really is needed. I even stayed on some of them for a reasonable length of time. So organizations have to be organized. I'm not only not knocking that, it's obvious, but are they too organized? Job descriptions in the early days used to have a whole page on limits of authority. That's a key issue. It just keeps people in. Headhunters manage their entire software systems on your function, your sector, and the geography you've worked in. That automatically blocks your development and your progress. In Myers-Briggs, which is a reasonable way of looking at type, the type that is born in, like left-handedness or right-handedness, we rely on people who love facts and detail. The other side is trends and what things could be. The downside of the facts and detail people who get promoted usually are that they like things that worked for them in the past. That's sensible. It also can, particularly in a boss behavior, block new possibilities. In the how we make decisions, it should be logical. But on the other side, there's a values-driven tribe, and we're told by the great universities that the best talent selects organizations that are mission-driven, that are values-driven. And then there's the how you run your life. Highly organized, love to finish something before you can start something different, doesn't like dilemma and paradox, and the more spontaneous, impulsive perception type that loves paradox and is constantly mulling paradox over in the brain and has had to rely on brain speed because he or she is essentially disorganized. Difficult conversations. Organizations that really motor forward invite difficult conversations. They don't just cope with it, they love it. And of course you have to come to alignment and you have to come to decisions. But all organizations need difficult conversations. And I wonder how Simon Berry got Parker points into Berry Brothers' website. I think it's a good thing. I bet it took some time. And bag in the box and screw caps, all of these seemed like revolutions at the time. So, this thing about the type, It's a type of person who automatically encapsulates. The type of person you hear say things like, after all, business is just selling things at more than it costs you to get hold of. Or, we manage assets to create value, which must grow in the competition for capital. This is somebody systemically thinking, and this is needed. Let's go on to this description, which I'm going to end on, and a couple of stories on going beyond your authority. I'm just about up to time, but I'm going to do it anyway. In looking at pubs in Leeds, because I was asked to, because I was doing translation when I was very young, most of the publicans in the street said it's hopeless, pubs are dying. And then one was thriving. And this guy had completely ignored what he'd been told to do in the pubs, how you manage a pub book, and had gone out and found out what was going on in his area of Leeds. And he ended up with day part offerings, coffee for old ladies, lunch for the insurance companies that worked nearby, and there was a rock karaoke group thing in the evenings, being very successful. The builders working in my house at the moment, who are the highest margin builders in the whole Bath area, had a meeting in the house with all the trades sitting down to ask my wife to say what her dream was for the new building, and then take everybody through all of the plans. During the Olympics, Danny Boyle had a room which once a week everybody went into, forbidden to have function. Any idea was a good idea. The lighting man could say he didn't like the music. This really can work. And Gareth Malone with Military Wives is a classic example of a small-time choir master going to a military compound, going beyond that into a Devon community that they'd never really gone out and met, eventually contacting the Albert Hall, all in this larger circle, and then now going virtually viral on the internet. And the internet affords so many possibilities in this huge area outside. So, I end. Remember, persist. Persist in trying to adapt the world to themselves, and a lot of it is by going beyond their authority. Look for those pushing beyond their authority, so long as their ideas resonate and they're in it for the group, not just themselves. Difficult people aren't always difficult, and the compliant ones are sometimes the problem. Thank you very much.